Back in Algebra 2, you learned how to shift quadratics, and those shifting rules were then able to be used to shift other functions as well. And we're going to use similar rules to shift these trig functions that we're talking about, sine and cosine. So let's think about our parabola shift here before we get into trig. Our parabola shifting, we use the letters H and K, and H shifted us left and right, K shifted us up and down, and A stretched us, basically made us get taller and skinnier, shorter and fatter. So when it comes to shifting trig functions, the same similar process is going to happen. Equation is going to look very similar as that. So if I'm going to do this with sine instead of both of them. It'll relate to both sine and cosine. Will shift the same. So if I have the sine of x and I want to shift this left or right, it's going to be a minus k in parentheses with the x. So it's going to shift the same way. If I want to shift up and down, I have the sine of x. I'm going to have a plus k at the end. That's going to be up or down as well. Your amplitude is how high your function is stretching and going up to its highest point. And we call this amplitude that a value out front. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And the only thing that's different, because parabolas don't have a period, but our sine and cosine functions start to repeat themselves after 2 pi on the axis. And that period can change. It can get bigger, it can get smaller, and it is all dependent upon the number in front of the x. If there's a number in front of x, that's going to change our period. Now, how does this relate to our two trig functions? So here's the full equation for both sine and cosine, where we have a out front is your amplitude. You'll notice actually it's the b inside that I just talked about for period. But if we had b times x minus h, we just have it multiplied through in the equation that I have righted. So technically the b is going to be factored out of both the x, so we get a singular h. Now the period is found by taking our traditional period of 2 pi and dividing by the value that you have out front for b. So since we have bx minus bh inside the parentheses, we want to just take that value and solve for x. That's going to, since the b kind of gets in there, solving for x helps us figure out our horizontal translation since it is a little different. And the k is going to be just the k value outside.